My name is Daniel, and I never believed in fate until the day I met him. It was September 3rd when I first saw the apartment listing. A 2-bedroom place in the heart of the city. Rent that wouldn't completely destroy my bank account, and available immediately. I had just gotten my first real job after graduation, working as a graphic designer at a small creative agency, and I desperately needed to move out of my parents' house. The landlord, Mrs. Chen, was a sweet, elderly woman who smelled like jasmine tea and spoke with a thick accent. She showed me around the apartment with pride, pointing out the large windows that let in streams of golden sunlight, the updated kitchen with marble countertops, and the cozy living room with exposed brick walls. Very good place, she said, nodding enthusiastically. But I must tell you, 1 bedroom, already taken. You share with another young man. He very quiet, very clean. Good boy. I hesitated for just a moment. Living with a stranger wasn't ideal, but the apartment was perfect, and I couldn't afford the full rent on my own. Can I meet him first? I asked. Mrs. Chen checked her watch. He at work now. Come back at 7, yes? You meet then. I agreed and spent the rest of the day trying not to overthink it. What if my potential roommate was some weird guy who collected taxidermied animals or played death metal at 3 in the morning? But when I returned that evening, all my worries evaporated the moment he opened the door. He stood there in a simple white t-shirt and dark jeans. His black hair slightly messy, like he'd just run his fingers through it. He had warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, and a presence that was somehow both calm and magnetic at the same time. "Hi," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Adrian. You must be Daniel?" His handshake was firm but gentle, and I noticed he had paint stains on his fingers, blues and greens and specks of gold. "Yeah, that's me. Nice to meet you." Adrian invited me inside, and we sat on the couch while Mrs. Chen made herself busy in the kitchen, giving us space to talk. He told me he was a middle school art teacher, which explained the paint. He'd been living in the apartment for 6 months and was looking for a roommate, because his previous one had moved in with his girlfriend. "I'm pretty low-key," Adrian said with an easy smile. "I usually paint in my room or the living room on weekends, but I can keep the mess contained if it bothers you. I like cooking, so I'm in the kitchen a lot. And I'm definitely not a party person, if that matters." "That sounds perfect, actually," I replied, feeling oddly relieved. "I'm not really into the whole party scene either. I mostly work on design projects or watch movies." We talked for another hour about everything from our favorite foods to our most embarrassing childhood memories. Adrian had this way of listening that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. He'd lean forward slightly, his eyes focused entirely on you. And he'd ask thoughtful follow-up questions that showed he was genuinely interested. By the end of the conversation, I knew I wanted to live there. It wasn't just the apartment anymore. It was him. I moved in 2 weeks later on a Saturday morning. Adrian helped me carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs, insisting he didn't mind even though I could see the sweat beading on his forehead. We ordered pizza for lunch and ate it sitting on the floor of my empty bedroom. Talking and laughing like we'd known each other for years instead of weeks. Those first few months, living together, were easy and comfortable. We fell into a natural rhythm. Adrian would wake up early and make coffee for both of us, leaving mine in a travel mug by the door with a little note that said things like, "Have a great day," or "Don't forget your umbrella. It's supposed to rain." I'd come home to find him grading papers at the kitchen table or painting in the living room. Classical music playing softly from his phone. We'd cook dinner together most nights, moving around each other in the small kitchen like dancers who'd rehearsed the routine 1,000 times. Adrian would chop vegetables while I prepared the protein, and we'd talk about our days, sharing stories and frustrations and small victories. He told me about his students, like Maya, who'd finally started opening up through her art, and I told him about difficult clients and impossible deadlines. On Friday nights, we had movie marathons. We'd take turns picking films, making popcorn with way too much butter, and settling onto the couch with blankets. Adrian had excellent taste, introducing me to foreign films and indie dramas I'd never heard of. I'd counter with sci-fi classics and the occasional superhero movie she'd pretend to tolerate but secretly enjoyed. I started noticing little things about him, the way he hummed while he cooked, how he always left his shoes perfectly aligned by the door. The fact that he dog-eared pages in his books, which I teased him about endlessly. The soft expression on his face when he looked at his students' artwork, full of pride and tenderness. And I noticed bigger things too, like how he never talked about dating anyone. How he'd changed the subject whenever I asked about his love life. How sometimes I'd catch him looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, something almost sad flickering across his features before he'd smile and look away. I told myself I was just being observant. That's what good roommates did, right? They paid attention to each other's habits and moods. It had nothing to do with the way my heart would skip a beat when he laughed at my jokes, or how I found myself looking forward to coming home just to see him for months into living together. Something shifted. It was a Thursday night in January, and I'd had the worst day at work. A major client had rejected my entire design proposal. My creative director had torn apart my revisions in front of the whole team. And I'd spilled coffee all over my favorite shirt. I came home feeling defeated and exhausted, ready to collapse into bed and forget the day had ever happened. But Adrian was in the kitchen making soup, and the apartment smelled like garlic and herbs and home. He took one look at my face and said, "Rough day." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without my voice breaking. "Sit down," he said gently, guiding me to a chair. "Tell me everything." And I did. I told him about the rejection and the humiliation and the feeling that maybe I wasn't good enough, that maybe I'd never be good enough. Adrian listened without interrupting, his eyes full of compassion, and when I finally finished, he placed a bowl of steaming soup in front of me. "Daniel," he said, sitting down across from me, "I've seen your work. You're incredibly talented. One bad day, one rejection, doesn't change that. Even the best designers face criticism. It's how you grow. But what if they're right?" I asked, my voice small. "What if I'm not as good as I thought?" Adrian reached across the table and covered my hand with his. The touch sent electricity through my skin, and I looked up, startled by the intensity in his eyes. "They're not right," he said firmly. "You're brilliant and creative and hardworking. Don't let one person's opinion make you doubt yourself." His hand was warm on mine, and for a moment we just sat there, connected. Then he pulled back, clearing his throat and looking away, and I felt the loss of his touch like a physical ache. That night, I lay in bed unable to sleep, thinking about the way his hand had felt on mine, about the conviction in his voice when he defended me, about the fact that I couldn't stop thinking about him, couldn't stop noticing every little detail, couldn't stop wanting to be near him. And that's when I realized the truth I'd been avoiding for months. I was falling in love with my roommate. The realization hit me like a wave, sudden and overwhelming. I was in love with Adrian. Not just attracted to him, not just fond of him as a roommate and friend, but genuinely, deeply in love. I stared at the ceiling of my bedroom, my heart pounding. How had I let this happen? Adrian was my roommate, my friend. He probably wasn't even gay. I'd never heard him mention dating guys, never caught him checking anyone out. And even if he was interested in men, that didn't mean he'd be interested in me. The smart thing would be to ignore these feelings, to push them down and maintain our friendship. But love, I was learning, doesn't respond to logic or good sense. The next few weeks were torture. I became hyper-aware of everything Adrian did. The way he'd stretch in the morning, his shirt riding up to reveal a strip of skin. How he'd bite his lower lip when he was concentrating on a painting. The sound of his laugh, warm and genuine. The smell of his cologne, something woodsy and clean that made my head spin. I tried to act normal, but I'm pretty sure I failed miserably. I became awkward and clumsy around him, knocking over glasses and tripping over my own feet. I'd catch myself staring and have to quickly look away. Once, when we were cooking together, Adrian reached past me to grab a spice, and his chest pressed against my back for just a second. I froze completely, unable to breathe, unable to think. "You okay?" he asked, pulling back and looking at me with concern. "Yeah, fine, just thinking about work," I stammered, which made no sense at all. Adrian started giving me strange looks, and I knew he could tell something was off. But he didn't push, didn't ask questions. He just continued being his wonderful, kind, oblivious self. I decided I needed advice, so I called my best friend Marcus. We'd been friends since college, and he was one of the few people who knew I was gay. I'd come out to my family in my final year of university, and while they'd been supportive, it still felt easier to talk to Marcus about relationship stuff. "You're living with him, and you're in love with him?" Marcus said over the phone, his voice a mix of sympathy and amusement. "Dude, that's rough." "I know," I groaned, flopping onto my bed. "What do I do?" "Well, first question, is he gay?" "I don't know. He's never mentioned dating anyone, male or female. He's really private about his personal life." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Maybe he's just not into dating. Or maybe he is gay but not out. Or maybe he's straight and just hasn't met the right person. You won't know unless you ask." "I can't just ask him if he's gay. What if he's not? What if it makes things weird?" "Daniel, you're already making things weird by being in love with him and acting all strange. At least if you talk to him, you'll know where you stand." I knew Marcus was right, but the thought of actually having that conversation terrified me. What if Adrian was disgusted? What if he wanted me to move out? What if I ruined the best friendship I'd ever had? "I need more time," I said finally. "Okay, but don't wait too long. This kind of thing has a way of exploding if you let it build up." I promised I'd think about it and ended the call feeling even more confused than before. The tension continued to build over the following weeks. I caught Adrian watching me sometimes with that same unreadable expression I'd noticed before. Once, I came home early and found him staring at a photo of us on his phone, a selfie we'd taken at a rooftop bar a few weeks earlier. Both of us laughing and close together. When he realized I was there, he quickly locked his phone and looked almost guilty. "Hey, didn't hear you come in," he said, his voice a little too bright. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, of course. Just looking at pictures from that night. It was fun." I wanted to ask why he'd look so sad while looking at a happy memory, but I didn't have the courage. Then came the night of March 15th. The night that changed everything. I'd been working late on a big project, and by the time I got home, it was almost midnight. I expected the apartment to be dark and Adrian to be asleep, but I could see light coming from under his bedroom door. I heard music too, something soft and melancholic that I didn't recognize. I should have just gone to my room, but I was worried. Adrian wasn't usually up this late on a weeknight, and there was something about the music that felt heavy with sadness. I knocked softly on his door. "Adrian, you still awake?" The music stopped abruptly. There was a long pause, then, "Yeah, come in." I opened the door to find Adrian sitting on his bed, still fully dressed, with a canvas propped up on his knees. He'd been painting, but unlike his usual vibrant work, this piece was all dark blues and grays, abstract shapes that seemed to swirl with emotion. "Hey," I said softly, stepping into the room. "You okay? You're usually asleep by now." Adrian set the canvas aside and rubbed his eyes. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and a tightness around his mouth. Couldn't sleep. Figured I'd paint for a while. I sat down on the edge of his bed, maintaining a careful distance. "What's wrong? And don't say nothing, because I can tell something's bothering you." He laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "You know me too well? That's what roommates are for, right? Knowing when something's up?" Adrian was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. The paint stains were darker today, almost like bruises against his skin. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Can I ask you something, Daniel?" "Of course, anything." Looked up at me, and the vulnerability in his eyes made my chest ache. Do you ever feel like you're living a lie? Like there's this huge part of yourself that you're hiding, and it's exhausting, but you don't know how to stop?" My heart started racing. This felt important, like we were standing on the edge of something significant. "Yeah," I said carefully. "I think everyone feels that way sometimes." But what if it's not just sometimes? What if it's all the time, every single day, and you're so tired of pretending, but you're terrified of what happens if you stop? I moved a little closer, drawn by the pain in his voice. Adrian, what are you trying to tell me? He stood up suddenly, pacing across the room. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. Forget it. No, don't do that. Don't shut me out. Whatever it is, you can tell me. Adrian stopped pacing and turned to face me. His hands were shaking. Daniel, and then his phone rang, shrill and sudden in the quiet room. We both jumped, and the moment shattered. Adrian looked at the screen and sighed. It's my mom. I should take this. She worries if I don't answer. Of course, I said, standing up. I'll let you wait. Adrian grabbed my wrist, his fingers warm and trembling against my skin. Tomorrow. Can we talk tomorrow? There's something I need to tell you. Something important. I've been trying to work up the courage for months, and I think I'm finally ready. I could barely breathe. Okay? Tomorrow? I'll be here. He released my wrist and answered the call. I left the room feeling like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed replaying the conversation over and over, trying to decode what Adrian had been trying to say. The way he'd talked about hiding and pretending, the vulnerability in his eyes, the fact that he'd been building up courage for months. Was it possible? Could Adrian be gay? Could he possibly feel the same way I did? I was terrified and hopeful in equal measure. The next day dragged by with agonizing slowness. I couldn't concentrate at work, couldn't think about anything except the conversation waiting for me at home. My boss asked if I was feeling okay, and I made up some excuse about not sleeping well. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, I was practically vibrating with nervous energy. I rushed home, taking the stairs 2 at a time, my heart pounding. But when I opened the apartment door, Adrian wasn't there. The lights were off, and everything was quiet. I checked my phone and found a text from him. Working late, won't be home until 9. Sorry. We'll talk then. Wanted to scream with frustration. Instead, I paced around the apartment, too anxious to eat or watch TV or do anything productive. I cleaned the kitchen 3 times, reorganized my bookshelf, and considered calling Marcus before deciding I needed to handle this on my own. Finally, at 9:15, I heard keys in the lock. Adrian came in, looking exhausted. His hair disheveled and his shirt wrinkled. Hey, he said, setting down his bag. Sorry I'm late. One of my students was having a crisis and needed to talk. It's okay, I said, though my voice came out strained. Are you too tired to talk? He shook his head. No, I need to do this now, or I'll lose my nerve again. He took a deep breath. Can we sit down? We moved to the couch, sitting on opposite ends, and the distance between us felt like miles. Adrian's hands were clasped tightly in his lap, and he was staring at them like they held all the answers. Daniel, he began, his voice shaking. We've been living together for almost 7 months now, and it's been the best 7 months I can remember. You're an amazing roommate and an even better friend, and I don't want to do anything to jeopardize that, but I prompted gently. But I can't keep pretending anymore. I can't keep lying to you, even if it's a lie of omission. He finally looked up at me, and his eyes were bright with unshed tears. I'm gay, Daniel. I've known since I was 14, and I've been out to close friends and family for years. But I don't talk about it much because it's complicated and sometimes scary, and I've learned to be careful about who I trust with this part of myself. My heart was soaring. He was gay. Adrian was gay. But I forced myself to stay calm, to let him finish. I should have told you earlier, he continued. But I was afraid. Afraid of how you'd react. Afraid of making you uncomfortable. Afraid of losing the friendship we've built. And then he paused, swallowing hard. And then I started developing feelings for you. Real feelings. And that made everything so much worse because I knew I was crossing a line. Developing romantic feelings for my straight roommate who trusted me and considered me a friend. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't do anything but stare at him in shock. I've tried to hide it, Adrian went on, words tumbling out now like he couldn't stop them. I've tried to push the feelings down and be normal around you, but it's killing me, Daniel. Every day it gets harder. Living with you, being near you, watching you be so kind and funny and wonderful, and knowing I can never have more than friendship. Last night, I almost told you everything, but I chickened out. And then today, I realized I couldn't keep doing this. You deserve to know the truth, even if it means you'll want me to move out. He finally stopped talking, his chest heaving with the effort of the confession, tears streaming down his face. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process everything he'd just said. Adrian was gay. Adrian had feelings for me. Adrian thought I was straight, and then I started laughing. Adrian looked stricken. I know it's not funny. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. No. That's not... I was laughing and crying at the same time, overwhelmed by emotion. Adrian, stop. Just stop for a second. He went quiet, watching me with confusion and hurt in his eyes. I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. Adrian, I'm gay too. The words hung in the air between us. Adrian's eyes went wide. You're... what? I'm gay, I repeated, my voice stronger now. I came out to my family in college. I thought you knew. I thought it was obvious. I had no idea, Adrian whispered. You never mentioned dating anyone. Never. Talked about. I thought you were just private about that stuff. I am private about it, I said. But also, I haven't dated anyone because... I gathered my courage, knowing this was my moment. Because I've been completely in love with you for the past 3 months and couldn't imagine being with anyone else. The look on Adrian's face was one of absolute shock. Like I'd just told him the sky was green. You're in love with me? So incredibly in love with you. It's been driving me crazy living with you, being around you all the time. Thinking you were straight, or at least not interested. I've been trying to hide it just like you, and apparently we've both been doing a terrible job of it. Adrian let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. I can't believe this. All this time, we've both been idiots, I finished. Complete idiots. And then we were both laughing, the tension of months breaking like a dam. Adrian moved across the couch, closing the distance between us. And suddenly his hands were cupping my face, his thumbs brushing away tears I didn't realize I'd been crying. Can I kiss you? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. Please, I breathed. Our lips met, and it was like coming home. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative and sweet, both of us still hardly believing this was real. But then Adrian's fingers tangled in my hair, and I pulled him closer. And the kiss deepened into something desperate and passionate. Months of longing pouring into this single moment. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. I've wanted to do that for so long, Adrian whispered. Me too. We stayed like that for a while, just holding each other, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. Eventually, we moved to lie down on the couch. Adrian's back against my chest, my arms wrapped around him. Can't believe we wasted so much time, he said softly. We didn't waste it, I replied, pressing a kiss to his temple. We were building a foundation. Friendship first, then everything else. Still, we could have been doing this for months. Well, we can make up for lost time now. Adrian turned in my arms to face me, his smile radiant. I really liked the sound of that. We talked for hours that night, sharing everything we'd been holding back. Adrian told me about his first crush on a boy in 7th grade, about coming out to his parents when he was 17 and the fear and relief that came with it. He told me about past relationships that hadn't worked out, about the teacher at his last school who'd made him feel unsafe about being openly gay, about his decision to be more careful about who he trusted. I told him about my own journey, about the confusion and self-discovery of my teenage years, about my parents' initial struggle to accept me before they came around. I told him about bad dates and failed relationships, about the loneliness of not finding someone who understood me. And then I met you, I said, running my fingers through his hair. And suddenly, everything made sense. You're such a romantic, Adrian teased. But his eyes were soft with affection. Only for you. We fell asleep on the couch that night, wrapped around each other. And I woke up to the early morning sun streaming through the windows and Adrian's peaceful face inches from mine. For a moment, I thought it had all been a dream. But then Adrian's eyes fluttered open, and he smiled at me with such pure happiness that I knew it was real. Good morning, he murmured. Best morning of my life, I replied. The next few weeks were like living in a dream. Adrian and I navigated our new relationship with a mixture of excitement and caution. Learning how to be boyfriends while still being roommates and friends, we took things slow, not wanting to rush into anything that might complicate our living situation. Most evenings, we'd cook dinner together like always. But now, there would be stolen kisses between stirring the pasta and chopping vegetables. Movie nights on the couch now meant curling up in each other's arms. Adrian's head resting on my shoulder, or my fingers playing with his hair. The physical affection came naturally, like we'd been waiting our whole lives for permission to touch each other. Simple things like holding hands while walking to the corner store, or Adrian's habit of hugging me from behind while I worked at my laptop felt profound and precious. But we were also careful. We decided not to tell people right away, wanting to keep this new and fragile thing private while we figured out what we were doing. It was our secret. It's our bubble of happiness that we weren't quite ready to share with the world. One Saturday morning, about 3 weeks after our confessions, I woke up to an empty bed. Adrian and I had started sleeping in the same room, usually his. Since his bed was bigger but this morning, he was nowhere to be found. I got up and padded into the living room to find him standing in front of a large canvas, a paintbrush in hand. Unlike the dark, melancholic painting I'd seen in his room that night, this one was full of light and color. Warm golds and soft blues, abstract shapes that somehow conveyed joy and movement. "What are you working on?" I asked, wrapping my arms around him from behind. Adrian leaned back into my embrace. "I'm painting how I feel, happy, free, like I can finally breathe properly for the first time in months." I pressed a kiss to his neck. "It's beautiful. You're beautiful," he countered, turning in my arms to face me. "And I'm so glad I found the courage to tell you the truth." Me too. We spent that whole day together, just enjoying each other's company. Adrian painted while I worked on a personal design project, both of us in our own creative worlds, but sharing the same space. We ordered Thai food for lunch and ate it straight from the containers, talking about everything and nothing. In the afternoon, Adrian set down his paintbrush and came over to where I was sitting. "Can I show you something?" "Always." He took my hand and led me to his bedroom, to the closet I'd never really looked in before. He opened it to reveal a collection of canvases, dozens of them, all turned to face the wall. "I want you to see these," he said, his voice nervous. "I painted them over the past few months when I was struggling with my feelings for you. I've never shown them to anyone." He pulled out the first canvas and turned it around. It was a painting of our living room, but rendered in such loving detail that it took my breath away. The evening light coming through the windows, the blankets on the couch, my laptop on the coffee table. It was our life, our home captured in paint. The next painting was of Hans's hands and mine. I realized almost touching, but not quite. The space between them full of tension and longing, Adrian showed me painting after painting, each one a window into his heart. There was one of coffee mugs on the kitchen counter, one of my profile as I concentrated on work, one of our shoes lined up by the door. Every single one was infused with so much love and attention that I felt tears pricking my eyes. "Adrian, these are incredible," I whispered. "They're all you," he said softly. "Or us. Or moments I wanted to remember." I couldn't tell you how I felt with words, so I painted it instead. I pulled him close, overwhelmed by the depth of emotion in those paintings. "I love them. I love you." It was the first time either of us had said those words, and Adrian's breath caught. "You love me? So much it scares me sometimes." "I love you too," he said, and then we were kissing again. The paintings forgotten as we lost ourselves in each other. That night, we finally told Marcus about us. I called him while Adrian sat beside me on the couch, our fingers intertwined. "So remember that roommate situation I was stressed about?" I began. "The one where you were hopelessly in love with your roommate?" Marcus replied. "Yeah, I remember." Turns out he was hopelessly in love with me too. There was a moment of silence, then Marcus let out a whoop, so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "I knew it. I told you to talk to him." "So you're together now?" "We're together," Adrian confirmed, speaking up so Marcus could hear. "Oh my God, is that him?" "Hi," Adrian. I'm Marcus Daniel's best friend, and I've been hearing about you for months. Adrian laughed. All good things, I hope. Mostly just Daniel being sappy and lovesick. But yes, good things. I'm really happy for you both. Talked with Marcus for another hour, and it felt good to share our happiness with someone else. Marcus made us promise to come visit him soon so he could meet Adrian properly. Over the following weeks, we slowly started telling other people. I told my parents during a phone call, and they were thrilled, immediately asking when they could meet Adrian. My mom sent him a care package the next day with homemade cookies and a sweet note welcoming him to the family. Adrian told his parents over dinner at their house. With me nervously sitting beside him, they were warm and loving. His mom cried happy tears while his dad shook my hand and told me to take good care of his son. We told our coworkers, our friends, gradually letting people into this beautiful thing we'd built. Everyone was supportive and happy for us. Though a few people admitted they'd suspected we were dating based on the way we looked at each other. You have this glow when you talk about him, my creative director told me. I figured it was just a matter of time. Spring turned into summer, and Adrian and I fell into an even deeper rhythm. We went on actual dates, now dinner at nice restaurants, walks through art galleries, picnics in the park. But we also loved just staying home, cooking together, watching movies, existing in each other's orbit. One evening in July, I came home to find the apartment transformed. There were candles everywhere, soft music playing, and the most delicious smell coming from the kitchen. What's all this? I asked, finding Adrian stirring something on the stove. It's our 6-month anniversary, he said, turning to smile at me. 6 months of living together, which means it's been about 4 months since we got together. I wanted to do something special. Adrian, you didn't have to. I wanted to. You've made me happier than I ever thought possible, and I wanted to celebrate that. We ate dinner by candlelight. Adrian had made my favorite pasta from scratch, and afterward, he presented me with a small canvas. I painted this for you, he said. Looking almost shy, the painting was of 2 figures standing close together, silhouetted against a sunrise. You couldn't see their faces, but their body language spoke of love and trust and home. In the corner, in small letters, he'd written, Daniel and Adrian, the beginning. It's perfect, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You're perfect. I'm really not. Adrian laughed. But I'm perfect for you, I think. You really are. As summer progressed, we talked about the future. About where we want it to be in 5 years, 10 years. Adrian mentioned maybe opening his own art studio someday. I talked about potentially freelancing instead of working for an agency. We talked about getting a dog, about traveling to places we'd always wanted to see, about all the adventures waiting for us. Do you ever regret it? Adrian asked one night as we lay in bed, taking a chance on a random roommate. Never, I said firmly. Best decision I ever made. Even though you got stuck with a sappy artist who leaves paint everywhere, especially because of that. One weekend in August, we decided to repaint the living room together. We moved all the furniture, covered the floors with tarps, and spent 2 days transforming the space from boring beige to a warm, golden yellow that reminded me of sunlight. At one point, I turned around to find Adrian staring at me with paint smudged on his cheek and the softest expression on his face. What? I asked, self-consciously touching my face. Do I have paint on me? Probably, Adrian said, stepping closer. But that's not why I'm looking at you. I'm just thinking about how lucky I am. How easily we could have never met, never lived together, never fallen in love. There were 1,000 ways this could have gone differently, but somehow we found each other. Fate, I said softly. You believe in that now? With you? Yes, absolutely. Adrian kissed me then, paint-stained hands and all, and I thought about how he was right. There were infinite versions of our lives where we never met, where one of us took a different apartment or moved to a different city. But in this version, this beautiful timeline, we'd found each other, and I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world. Our relationship wasn't perfect, of course. No relationship is. As we moved deeper into our first year together, we had to navigate the usual challenges of any couple. Complicated by the fact that we were also roommates, our first real fight happened in October, over something ridiculous. I'd forgotten to buy groceries like I'd promised, which meant Adrian couldn't make the dinner he'd planned. He was frustrated. I got defensive. And suddenly we were arguing about things that had nothing to do with groceries about communication and consideration and feeling taken for granted. "I'm not asking for much," Adrian said, his voice tight. "Just for you to follow through when you say you'll do something." I forgot, okay? I had a busy day at work. It's not the end of the world. It's not the point. The point is that I can't rely on you if you keep forgetting important things. "Oh, and you're perfect?" "You left the bathroom a mess this morning, but I didn't say anything." We went back and forth like that for 20 minutes, both of us saying things we didn't mean, both of us hurt and defensive. Finally, Adrian grabbed his jacket and keys. "I need some air," he said, and walked out. I sat alone in the apartment, replaying the argument in my head and feeling terrible. He was right, I had been flaky lately, distracted by a big project at work. And instead of apologizing, I'd attacked him back. Adrian came back an hour later with takeout from our favorite restaurant. We sat down at the kitchen table and he reached for my hand. "I'm sorry I got so angry," he said quietly. "I overreacted. No, you were right. I have been dropping the ball on things, and that's not fair to you. I'm sorry." We talked it through properly this time, without the anger and defensiveness. We established better communication habits, like keeping a shared grocery list on our phones and checking in with each other when we were feeling overwhelmed. The fight wasn't fun, but it taught us how to navigate conflict together. There were other challenges too. My parents came to visit in November, and while they'd been supportive over the phone, having them stay in our apartment for a weekend was stressful. My dad kept asking uncomfortable questions about our relationship, and my mom couldn't seem to stop making comments about how we slept in the same room. "It's just taken some getting used to," Adrian said after they left, as we collapsed on the couch, exhausted. "They love you, and they're trying. That's what matters." "I know, but I hate that you have to deal with their weird energy." "Daniel, my parents asked if we were planning to have kids within 5 minutes of meeting you." All parents are weird about their kids' relationships. That made me laugh, and I pulled him close. Fair point. We also had to navigate the professional boundaries of our relationship. Adrian was incredibly private about his personal life at work, partly because he taught middle school and worried about parents' reactions if they knew he was gay. While most people were accepting, there had been incidents at his previous school that made him cautious. "I'm not ashamed of us," he explained one evening. "I just want to be careful. These kids depend on me, and I don't want to give anyone a reason to try to get me fired." "I understand," I said, though part of me wished the world was different, that Adrian didn't have to worry about such things. One of my students figured it out, though Adrian admitted, with a small smile, "Maya, the one I've told you about. She saw a picture of us on my phone when I was showing her something, and she just said, 'Is that your boyfriend? He's cute,' just completely casual about it." "What did you say?" I said yes, and she said cool, and went back to talking about her art project. It was the most refreshingly normal reaction I've ever had. As the holidays approached, we faced our first major decision as a couple, whose family to spend them with. My family always did Christmas Eve, and Adrian's family had a big Christmas Day celebration. We could split them, I suggested. Christmas Eve with mine, Christmas Day with yours. Or we could host our own celebration, Adrian said thoughtfully. Invite both families here. It might be chaotic, but it could also be really nice. We decided to go with Adrian's idea. We spent a week preparing, deep cleaning the apartment, planning the menu, and decorating every surface with lights and garlands. Adrian painted a beautiful winter scene as a centerpiece for the dining table. Christmas Day arrived. Both families descended on our small apartment. It was chaotic and loud and occasionally awkward when our parents tried too hard to bond, but it was also wonderful. Watching our families come together, seeing them accept and celebrate our relationship, felt like validation of everything we'd built. My mom and Adrian's mom bonded over recipes. Our dads got into a lengthy discussion about sports. Adrian's sister taught my brother a card game. And through it all, Adrian and I moved through the crowd together, hosting and laughing and stealing moments alone in the kitchen. This is nice, Adrian whispered during one such moment, wrapping his arms around me from behind as I washed dishes. It really is, I agreed. Our families, our home, our life. I could get used to this. Good, because I'm planning on keeping you around for a long time. As the year drew to a close, Adrian and I took stock of everything that had happened. We'd gone from roommates to friends to lovers, navigating challenges and growing together. We'd built a life that felt solid and real and beautiful. On New Year's Eve, we stayed home instead of going to parties. We cooked a nice dinner, drank champagne, and at midnight, we stood on our small balcony watching fireworks light up the city sky. "Happy New Year," Adrian said, pulling me close. "Happy New Year," I echoed. "Here's to many more. With you. I'm counting on it." The revelation I mentioned at the beginning of this story, the one that shocked me, happened on a cold January night. Almost exactly a year after I'd moved into the apartment, Adrian and I had been together for 9 months, and I thought I knew everything about him. We'd shared our histories, our fears, our dreams. We'd seen each other at our best and worst. I thought there were no more secrets between us. I was wrong. It started with Adrian acting strange. He'd been quieter than usual for a few days, distracted and distant. When I asked if something was wrong, he'd just smile and say he was fine. But I could tell he was lying. Then, on January 3rd, I came home from work to find Adrian sitting at the kitchen table with a photo album I'd never seen before. His eyes were red, like he'd been crying, and he looked up at me with an expression of such vulnerability that it made my heart clench. "Hey," I said softly, setting down my bag. "What's going on?" "There's something I need to tell you," Adrian said, his voice shaking. "Something I should have told you months ago, but I was scared. I'm still scared, but I can't keep this from you anymore." I sat down across from him, suddenly nervous. "Okay, whatever it is, we'll deal with it together." Adrian took a deep breath and pushed the photo album toward me. "Before I say anything, I want you to look at this." I opened the album to find pictures of Adrian from several years ago. He looked younger, maybe early 20s, and he was with another man. They were clearly a couple holding hands, kissing, looking at each other with obvious love. The other man was handsome, with dark curly hair and a bright smile. "His name was David," Adrian said quietly. "We met in college, fell in love, moved in together after graduation. He was my first real relationship, my first love." I looked up from the photos, confused about why Adrian was telling me this now. "Okay," I said carefully. "You had a serious relationship before me. That's normal. It doesn't change anything." "Please just listen," Adrian said, tears starting to fall. "We were together for 3 years. We were happy. We talked about getting married, about building a life together. And then," his voice broke, "then he died." The words hit me like a physical blow.
What? Car accident?
A drunk driver ran a red light. David was killed instantly. It was 4 years ago, but sometimes it feels like yesterday. I reached across the table and took Adrian's hand, squeezing tight. "Adrian, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I didn't tell you because I didn't know how. How do you tell someone you love that you've lost someone you loved before? How do you explain that you're still carrying that grief, that it never fully goes away even when you're happy again?" "You just tell them," I said gently. "You trust them to understand." Adrian pulled his hand back and stood up, pacing the kitchen. "But that's not all. There's more. And this is the part I'm really scared to tell you." "Adrian, whatever it is, this apartment," he interrupted. "This apartment was ours. Mine and David's. We moved in here together right after college. Every corner of this place has memories of him. The kitchen, where we cooked together. The living room where he'd read while I painted. Even the bedroom that was our bedroom." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "You've been living here all this time? In the apartment you shared with him?" "I couldn't leave," Adrian said, his voice breaking. "After he died, everyone told me I should move, that it would be healthier to start fresh somewhere new. But this place was all I had left of him. Our home, our life together. Leaving felt like losing him all over again." I sat there trying to process this information. I'd been living in a space that held so much history, so much pain, and I'd had no idea. When my old roommate moved out, Adrian continued, I knew I should probably move too, but I couldn't do it. So I decided to look for a new roommate instead. And then you showed up. He turned to face me, tears streaming down his face. I never planned to fall in love with you, Daniel. I thought I was done with love, that I'd had my chance and lost it. But you were so kind and funny and wonderful, and slowly, without meaning to, I started healing. You made me feel alive again. Adrian, but I've been living with this guilt, he went on. Guilt about moving on, about being happy with you in the space I shared with David. Guilt about not telling you the truth from the beginning. And last night, I had this dream about David, and he told me I needed to tell you everything. That I couldn't build a future with you while hiding my past. I stood up and crossed to him, pulling him into my arms. He collapsed against me, sobbing. And I held him tight while my own mind raced with emotions, shock, sadness, confusion, and underneath it all, love. I'm not mad, I said into his hair. I'm not. I just wish you'd told me sooner so you didn't have to carry this alone. Are you sure? Adrian pulled back to look at me, his eyes searching my face. You're not upset that I brought you into this apartment without telling you its history? That I've been keeping this huge part of my life secret? I'm upset that you've been hurting and didn't feel like you could tell me, I said honestly. But I understand why you didn't. This is complicated and painful, and there's no guidebook for how to navigate it. Do you want to move? Adrian asked. I'd understand if being here bothers you now that you know. I thought about it carefully. The apartment did feel different now, knowing its history, but it was still our home, the place where Adrian and I had fallen in love. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe we should talk about it, but not tonight. Tonight, I just want you to tell me about David. I want to know about the person you loved, about what you went through. We stayed up all night talking. Adrian told me everything, how he and David met at an art gallery opening. Their first date at a coffee shop, where they talked for 6 hours straight. The way David used to wake him up with terrible singing. The trip they took to Paris, where David proposed, Adrian had said yes, though they never made it to actually getting married. He told me about the accident, about getting the call from the hospital, about the funeral where he felt like he was underwater, unable to breathe, about the months after where he barely functioned, where painting was the only thing that kept him sane. I was in therapy for 2 years, Adrian said. I still go sometimes when I need to. It helped me work through the grief, helped me understand that healing doesn't mean forgetting. Do you still love him? I asked, needing to know the answer, even though I was afraid of it. Adrian considered the question carefully. I'll always love him, he said finally. He was a huge part of my life, and that doesn't just disappear. But it's different now. It's like he's a part of my past that shaped who I am, but he's not my present or my future. You are. I can live with that, I said. I don't expect to be your only love ever. I just want to be your love now. You are, Adrian said firmly. Daniel, you brought me back to life. You made me believe I could be happy again, that I deserved to be happy again. I love you so much, and I'm sorry I didn't trust you with this sooner. I love you too, and thank you for telling me now. We sat together in silence for a while, processing everything. Then Adrian said, there's one more thing. Something I want to show you. He led me to his bedroom closet and pulled out a box from the top shelf. Inside were more photos, some letters, a few of David's belongings that Adrian had kept. I've been thinking about what to do with these, Adrian said. I don't want to throw them away, but I also don't want to keep them hidden like some shameful secret. They're part of my story. Then let's find a proper place for them, I suggested. Somewhere respectful, but not hidden. What if we got a nice memory box and kept it on the bookshelf? That way it's acknowledged, but not dominating our space. Adrian looked at me with such gratitude. You'd be okay with that? Of course. David was important to you. His memory deserves to be honored, not hidden away. Over the next few days, we worked together to find a balance. We bought a beautiful wooden box and placed David's photos and mementos inside, putting it on a shelf in the living room. Adrian painted a small